He's battling his own ego, not his feelings. And that distinction is everything. You see, when someone doesn't text you, the most natural conclusion is to think, well, he must not care. That's where your mind immediately goes. Because in your world, if you wanted to talk to someone, you'd reach out. If you were thinking about someone all day, you'd do something about it. But the truth is, not everyone functions that way, especially when they're fighting a war with themselves. He does want to talk to you. In fact, he's probably staring at his phone more than you realize, typing, deleting, rewriting, sitting in silence, wondering if he should. He's constructing scenarios in his mind, trying to figure out how it will play out if he does text you. What if she ignores it? What if I give away too much power? Because this isn't about whether he feels something for you. He does. That's not in question. This is about his fear of what those feelings expose in him. It's about the ego. And the ego hates vulnerability. It hates uncertainty. It hates rejection. And when a guy is wrapped up in his ego, even his strongest feelings can get buried under fear. You might be thinking, but if he's a grown man, shouldn't he be able to get over himself? And sure, ideally, yes. But the reality is, we're all fighting our own internal narratives. He might have been hurt before. He might have chased someone in the past, only to be ghosted, humiliated, or left hanging. And even though you're not that person, he's still carrying the emotional scars. The ego remembers every blow, and it works overtime to protect him from repeating those mistakes. That's why silence sometimes feels safer than sincerity. He'd rather sit in discomfort than risk doing something that makes him feel exposed. He tells himself, if she really wanted to talk, she would reach out. That way, if nothing happens, it's not because he put his heart on the line and got ignored, it's because she didn't try either. But of course, that's not strength. That's fear dressed up as strategy. It's important to understand this kind of emotional paralysis doesn't mean he's playing games. He's not trying to manipulate you or make you suffer. He's trying to protect himself. He's using silence as a shield because for some men, silence feels like control. Texting you would mean surrendering that control, opening a door that could lead anywhere. And that uncertainty is terrifying to someone whose ego is in the driver's seat. You might notice the mixed signals. One day he's all in, showing interest, making you feel like something real is building. Then, just as quickly, he withdraws. You're left wondering, did I imagine it all? You didn't. What you saw was real. But feelings alone aren't always enough. Sometimes the louder the feelings, the louder the ego has to yell to suppress them. And when someone is scared of what those feelings will lead to, they pull back. Not because they don't, but because they care more than they're comfortable admitting. And this is the moment where so many people get stuck. They think if he wanted to, he would. And yes, in a healthy place, that's true. But this isn't always about want. It's about capacity. Some people want to love, want to connect, want to step up, but they haven't yet developed the emotional muscle to handle it when it shows up. So instead of rising to meet it, they retreat. Not because they're cold or calculating, but because they're scared. And here's what happens when a guy is scared. He rewrites the narrative in his head. Maybe she's too good for me. Maybe I'll mess this up. Maybe I'm not ready for something serious. These are ego defenses. They're not rooted in truth. They're rooted in fear. And fear always chooses self-preservation over connection. Now, I'm not saying you should sit around waiting for him to get over himself. You're not someone's emotional rehab center. But what I am saying is, don't assume his silence means indifference. Don't assume it's because you're not enough. This isn't about you not being enough. This is about him not being ready. Not for a conversation, but for what that conversation represents. Vulnerability. Effort, intimacy, risk. He's not texting you because he's convinced himself that not texting you is safer. Safer for his pride, safer for his emotions, safer for his image. He's not texting you because he's trying to protect the fragile story he's built about how relationships should work. That he should always be the one in control. That needing someone is weakness. that silence equals strength. But in the quiet moments when the ego isn't so loud, he's thinking of you. He's wondering what you're doing. If you're thinking about him too, if someone else has your attention now. That's the irony. He's dying to connect, but he's imprisoned by the fear of what it might cost him. So the next time you feel tempted to read his silence as a lack of care, pause, take a breath, and remember this. It's not that he doesn't feel something for you. It's that he's fighting the part of himself that doesn't know how to handle those feelings. And that's a battle he has to win on his own. You know, one of the most confusing and frustrating moments in dating is when you're absolutely sure there was a connection. I'm talking undeniable chemistry, shared laughter, even those deep, meaningful looks, and then suddenly, silence. He doesn't text. Days go by, maybe even a week, and you're sitting there wondering what happened. Did I imagine everything? But here's the truth that most people won't tell you. He's not texting you, not because he's moved on or because he wasn't interested, but because he's waiting for a green light, a sign that it's safe to reach out. Let's break this down. A lot of men, especially ones who genuinely care, don't want to feel vulnerable. They don't want to feel like they're putting themselves out there and risking looking desperate. So what do? They hesitate. They sit with their phone in their hand, crafting the message in their mind, deleting it, typing it again, and then ultimately deciding, maybe not. Why? Because they don't know where they stand with you. This is where it gets complicated. You may think you've done nothing to make him feel unsure. Maybe you've even been warm, open, and responsive, but men can be hypersensitive to perceived changes in energy. If at any point the momentum slows down, maybe your replies got a little shorter, maybe you were busy and didn't engage the same way, or maybe the last conversation just didn't end with the same sparkle, he might interpret that as a shift. He might think she's losing interest, or worse, she was never that into me in the first place. Now, is that always rational? No, but dating isn't rational, it's emotional. And most people, when they care, when they actually like someone, become insecure. And that insecurity leads to a kind of paralysis. They want to text, they crave that connection, but they don't want to feel like they're chasing someone who's already walking away. So he waits. He thinks, I'll text her tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes 2 days, then a week. He tells himself, if she really wanted to hear from me, she'd send something, even just a quick check-in. And here's the kicker. He's not necessarily playing a game. He's trying to protect himself. He's trying to not be the guy who puts his heart out there only to get ghosted or rejected, or worse, ignored. That's a real fear for a lot of men, especially ones who've been burned before. Sometimes it's even more subtle. He might be replaying a moment in the last conversation, wondering if he said the wrong thing. Did he joke too much? Did he open up too fast? Did he come off too strong? And instead of reaching out to clarify or keep the connection going, he withdraws. Not because he wants to lose you, but because he's afraid he's already lost you and just doesn't want to face it. Now, from your side, it just looks like silence. And that silence is maddening. You start questioning everything. You might even get frustrated and think, if he wanted to talk to me, he would. And that's fair. That's how we've been taught to measure interest, right? But sometimes the inaction isn't a lack of interest. It's fear. It's doubt. It's hesitation born from not knowing how you feel. Here's the wild part. If you were to send him a short, low-pressure message, something simple like, hey, just thought of you, hope your week's going okay, you might be shocked at how fast and enthusiastically he replies. It's like you cracked open the door just enough to let him feel safe again. That little text becomes the permission slip he needed to step back in, to be himself again, to show up the way he wanted to in the first place. Now, I'm not saying it's your responsibility to initiate. I'm not saying you should always be the one to reach out first, but I am saying that sometimes it's not about who texts first. It's about breaking the silence in a way that invites honesty, not games. If you're genuinely curious, if you genuinely feel there's something real there, one small message might be the bridge that gets you back on track. Or it might confirm he's not worth your time. Either way, you get clarity, and clarity is power. Too often, we let pride stop us from getting the answers we want. We sit on opposite sides of a standoff, both people waiting, wondering, but neither willing to blink first. And in the process, something that could have grown, something that had real potential, just fades away. Not because of a lack of chemistry or compatibility or timing, but because of silence. Because both people were scared to go first. So when he doesn't text, don't automatically assume it means he's not interested. Ask yourself, have I given him any reason to feel uncertain? Have I been clear in my energy, or have I accidentally pulled back in a way that could confuse him? And if the answer is yes, even slightly, maybe it's worth giving him that green light, that tiny window that tells him, hey, it's okay, you can text me, I'll respond. Because sometimes it's not about being chased, it's about creating the space where two people feel safe enough to meet in the middle, and that one moment of courage could change everything. He's trying to regain control. Now, this one might sting a little, but I want to be honest with you. Not because I want to make you second guess everything, but because I want you to finally understand what's really going on beneath the surface when he pulls away. See, when a man starts to feel like he's lost the upper hand in a connection, especially early on, something strange happens. He doesn't communicate that he's feeling vulnerable. He doesn't say, hey, I feel like I care more than you do right now, and that's scary. Instead, he goes quiet. He creates distance. Not because he doesn't like you, not because he's no longer interested, but because he's trying to regain a sense of control. He might have been the one doing all the chasing in the beginning. He texted first. He planned the dates. He showed up with enthusiasm. He opened the door, not just literally, but emotionally. And then something shifted. Maybe you started to reciprocate. Maybe you got a little more comfortable. You let him know you liked him back. And that's when the panic set in. Now, in a healthy dynamic, that's a beautiful moment, the moment when both people feel safe to meet each other in the middle. But for some men, especially those who have unresolved insecurities or past wounds, that moment feels like losing the upper hand. So what does he do? He starts pulling away, not because he wants you gone, but because he wants to feel wanted again. He wants to reset the balance. In his mind, if I take a step back, maybe she'll come toward me. Maybe I'll feel that sense of power again. This isn't about manipulation. I want to be clear on that. It's not always a calculated game. It's often subconscious. It's instinctual. It's rooted in fear, fear of being too vulnerable, fear of being exposed, fear of losing leverage in the dynamic. And instead of dealing with that fear in a mature way, he copes with it by withdrawing. You might notice it in subtle ways first. The good morning texts get less consistent. He takes longer to respond. He starts putting more effort into looking like he's busy, like his life is suddenly overflowing with things that have nothing to do with you. And it confuses the hell out of you because, wait a minute, didn't he just tell you last week how amazing you are? Didn't he just say he hasn't felt this way in a long time? And that's the frustrating part. You're sitting there staring at your phone, replaying all the things he said, wondering what went wrong, when in reality, nothing went wrong. You just reached a point where the connection got real enough to scare him, real enough to make him feel like he was no longer in control. And instead of leaning in, he pulled away to regain that control. Sometimes it's not even about you, it's about him not feeling like enough. It's about him thinking, if I fall too hard, I'll get hurt. If I show too much, I'll lose my edge. If I'm always available, she'll take me for granted. So he flips the script. He withholds attention. He becomes mysterious, not because he wants to, but because he thinks it will bring him back to a place of emotional safety. Now, here's the dangerous part. If you don't understand this pattern, you might start chasing him. You'll start texting more, initiating more, trying to get back to the version of him you saw at the beginning. And in doing so, you unconsciously reinforce his fear that he needs to pull away in order to feel powerful again. It becomes a cycle. He pulls away, you lean in, he feels desired, then he comes back, until it happens all over again. But here's what you need to know. The moment someone starts using silence as a way to feel powerful, the relationship becomes imbalanced. Love, connection, partnership, none of that thrives in a space where power games exist. You deserve someone who doesn't feel the need to withdraw to feel safe. You deserve someone who can sit in the discomfort of real intimacy and still choose to stay present. If he's pulling back to regain control, you don't have to play the same game. You don't have to punish him. You don't have to chase him either. What you do is step back with self-respect. You let him sit in that silence. You give him space, not as a strategy, but because you value yourself too much to fight for someone who's trying to control the dynamic through distance. If he's truly interested, if he truly cares, he'll come back. But more importantly, he'll come back in a way that shows growth, not with the same hot and cold routine, but with the awareness that connection isn't about who has more control. It's about two people choosing each other equally, consistently and without fear. And if he doesn't, that's your answer. You ever wonder why someone who seemed so into you suddenly disappears? Not completely, but just enough to drive you mad. He liked you, he showed interest, maybe even chased you a little, and now radio silence. You're left refreshing your messages, thinking, what happened? Let me tell you something that might just blow your mind. He's not pulling away because he doesn't care. He's pulling away because he thinks it'll make you want him more. That's right. He believes his silence is a strategy. He's convinced that if he doesn't text, if he holds back, if he makes you feel like he's the one who's suddenly less available, it'll ignite something in you, that it'll flip the script, make you chase him, make you think, did I do something wrong? Is he losing interest? Maybe I should reach out first. He wants you in that headspace, not because he's manipulative or cruel, but because deep down, he's insecure. And this is his way of getting back some power. You have to understand, so many people are operating from a place of fear, especially in relationships. He's afraid that if he shows too much interest, if he texts too quickly, if he comes off as too eager, you'll pull away, that you'll think he's needy, or worse, that he has no other options. So instead of being authentic, instead of just doing what he feels, he plays a role. He convinces himself that withholding attention will increase his value in your eyes. It's the classic scarcity equals value mindset. And in his head, he thinks, if I become less available, I'll become more attractive. Now, here's where it gets complicated and a little sad. Sometimes it actually works, not because it's a healthy approach, but because we too have been conditioned to equate distance with desirability. Someone pulling away makes us question what we had. We start filling in the silence with our own insecurities. Did I say something wrong? Was I too forward? Did I misread the signals? And suddenly the power shifts. You go from being pursued to being the one who's wondering. And that's exactly the dynamic he's hoping for, not because he wants to hurt you, but because he's afraid of getting hurt first. That silence isn't confidence, it's defense. He's guarding himself from vulnerability. He's trying to manufacture mystery where there was once connection, thinking that's what will keep your attention. But let me ask you something. Is that really what you want? A relationship built on tension and second guessing? Someone who makes you feel anxious to create attraction? That's not chemistry. That's instability disguised as excitement. Real connection doesn't need games. It doesn't need someone pretending to be disinterested to be desirable. If he's dying to text you, but he's holding back just to seem cool or in control, what does that say about how ready he is to show up fully for someone? If the only way he can feel powerful is by making you feel uncertain, that's not strength. That's fear in disguise. You see, love isn't a power struggle. It's not about who cares less. It's not about who waits longer to text back. It's about honest communication, two people meeting each other with openness, not strategy. But this is the trap he's in. He thinks silence makes him mysterious. He thinks you'll crave him more if he withholds. He believes that texting too soon or too much will ruin the chase. But here's the truth. The right person doesn't need to be chased into connection. The right person wants to build it with you. They won't make you wonder. They won't risk losing you just to look like they've got it all together. So if you're sitting there wondering why he hasn't texted, even though all signs pointed to interest, remember this: his silence doesn't always mean he doesn't care. Sometimes it means he cares too much about how he's being perceived. Sometimes it means he's more focused on protecting his ego than nurturing the bond between you. That's not sexy. That's not romantic. That's just fear running the show. And listen, it's tempting to fall into the trap, to start matching his energy, to mirror his silence, to try and win at his game. But here's what makes you powerful: refusing to play it, refusing to shrink yourself into someone else's insecurity. You don't need someone who's afraid to show up. You need someone who texts because they want to, not because they've calculated the exact number of hours to wait. You deserve consistency. You deserve clarity. And above all, you deserve someone whose interest in you is greater than their fear of rejection. Because if he's truly dying to text you but won't, that's not your problem to solve. That's his. He doesn't know what to say, but he's replaying your last conversation. And I know how frustrating that can feel. You're sitting there thinking, if he wanted to talk to me, he would. But here's what most people don't realize. When someone really wants to say something, when they really care, they don't always rush to speak. Sometimes they freeze, not because they're indifferent, but because they're terrified of getting it wrong. See, we assume silence means someone has moved on, that they're out there living their life, unbothered, detached, and perfectly fine without us. But that's not always the case. Sometimes silence doesn't come from a lack of care, it comes from too much care. And when someone's emotionally invested, that silence can become a war zone inside their head. He's replaying your last conversation, word for word, rereading your last message, thinking, did that sound off? Was she pulling back? Was I too much? Or maybe even, did I say something wrong? And in those moments, instead of taking action, he stalls. Not because he doesn't want to text you, but because he doesn't know how to anymore. People often assume men are naturally confident with communication, but the truth is, when emotions are involved, the stakes feel incredibly high. If you're just a fling or someone he's not emotionally invested in, texting is easy. No pressure. But when a guy actually cares, that's when he starts second-guessing himself. And it's ironic, isn't it? Because the very thing that makes him hesitate is how much you matter to him. So what happens? He drafts a message, deletes it, writes another one, stares at it, leaves it unsent. He's sitting there thinking, if I text now, will it seem like I'm too eager? What if she's already losing interest? What if I open that door and she doesn't walk through it? And the saddest part is all that internal noise keeps him from doing the one thing that might actually move things forward. Simply reaching out. You might be tempted to think, well, if he really liked me, he'd push past all that. But remember, liking someone doesn't automatically give you courage. Sometimes it actually steals your courage because the fear of messing it up becomes paralyzing. You're no longer just a fun conversation. You're someone's opinion matters. It creates vulnerability. And vulnerability, when left unpracticed, can make people go silent. He might also be telling himself stories. Maybe she's already talking to someone else. Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe I should just wait until she reaches out. And with every passing hour, he gets deeper into that narrative. And the deeper he goes, the harder it becomes to break the silence. Because now it's not just about texting you, it's about all the overthinking he has to fight through first. And let me tell you, that's a powerful opponent. You see, silence doesn't always equal clarity. Sometimes it's just confusion wearing a quiet mask. And while you're wondering why he's disappeared, he's stuck in this mental loop, trying to find the right words that won't make him feel exposed, that won't make him look weak, that won't make him feel like he's giving more than. But here's the truth he hasn't realized. By not texting you, he's already giving more than he thinks. He's giving you the burden of wondering, of questioning your own worth, of trying to decode what his silence means. And that's not fair, because silence isn't neutral. Silence says something. And while he may be telling himself that not texting is the safer move, what he doesn't understand is that silence also creates distance, emotional distance. And over time, that becomes hard to come back from. And maybe you're wondering, should I text first? That's your call. Because what matters more than who texts first is why you're texting. Are you doing it because you miss him? Because you genuinely want to connect? Or are you doing it just to break the discomfort of silence? The answer matters. Because if you're always the one reaching out just to soothe the awkward gap, then the dynamic starts to tip. It starts to feel like you're carrying the whole connection on your back. But if he's some worth your energy, if the connection you shared was real, then know this: the silence doesn't mean he's over you. It might just mean he's overwhelmed. It might mean he's scared. It might mean he's in his head. And no, that doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does explain it. And sometimes understanding the why gives you the power to make your next move from clarity, not from insecurity. So don't confuse silence with closure. Don't let your mind fill in the blanks with the worst case scenario. Because in his world, he's not ignoring you. He's thinking about you so much, he's paralyzed. He's caught between what he wants to do and what he thinks he should do. And that tension, that fear, that hesitation, that's where he's stuck. But life rewards the bold, and eventually the question becomes, will he stay trapped in his head, or will he have the courage to get out of it and reach for something real? Because at the end of the day, the silence isn't because he doesn't care, it's because he does. When a guy is dying to text you but doesn't, there's a very real chance he's testing you. Not in the obvious manipulative way where someone plays games to mess with your head. No, this is quieter, subtle, and in many cases, completely subconscious. He wants to see if you'll notice his absence, if you'll fill the space he's left. He's pulling back just slightly, not because he's lost interest, but because he wants to feel wanted, desired, important. Think about that for a second. That silence isn't a message, it's a question. And the question sounds like this: will she reach out first? Does she care as much as I do? If I stop putting in effort, will she notice and try? Now, from the outside, that can look immature, like someone playing hard to get. But when you look a little deeper, it's not about a game, it's about fear. Men get scared too. They just don't always have the emotional language to say, I'm afraid you don't feel the same. So instead, they retreat. They hide in the silence, hoping you'll be the one to step forward and prove them wrong. They want to feel that you want them, not just as a reaction to their pursuit, but genuinely, authentically, unprovoked. And that's the crazy paradox here, because in those moments where he's sitting with his phone, staring at your name, thumb hovering over the screen, it's not that he doesn't want to text, it's that he wants you to want him to text. He wants to be missed. It's his way of saying, I'm always the one reaching out. What happens if I stop? And this isn't about keeping score. I texted first last time, or I initiated the last 3 conversations. It's about emotional risk, about him wanting to feel like he's not out there on the ledge alone. So he pulls back. He waits. Maybe he's told himself, if she doesn't message me by tonight, I'll take that as a sign she's not into me. Maybe he's hoping you'll like one of his posts. Send a meme, just something to break the silence and let him know he still matters to you. But the hardest part? He won't admit any of this, not even to himself. Because to say it out loud would make him vulnerable. It would mean showing that he cares, maybe even more than you do. And for a lot of men, that's terrifying. So instead of saying, I miss you, he says nothing. Instead of texting, I was thinking about you, he waits. And he tells himself,